Hey guys, so today I wanted to do another trapping video. And this one's going to be on probably the most famous deadfall trigger that most people have seen in most every survival book. It's called a figure 4, and there's really a good reason why it is so famous. It is really the most, probably the most adaptable trap trigger that you can use. You can make it for a deadfall, you can have it reverse for like a twitch up snare, which I might show in another video. Over the years, I've kind of come to modify it in different ways. It's pretty much the same thing, but there's just so many ways to adapt it and use it for different situations. You could make it so sensitive it could trigger, grasshopper could trigger it, which you're not going to use it for grasshoppers anyway, but a small mouse. Or you can make it a little less sensitive for, say, a big fox or coyote who you kind of want to let them tug at it a little bit. But there's so many ways you can adjust it. So I'm going to show you the best way I found to simply, easily carve a figure 4 from a stick that's probably about, I don't know, depending on what you're trying to do. Like this would probably be good for squirrels or rats or anything like that. But something about the size of your pinky finger or your middle finger should work good for that. If you're using smaller sticks, it just makes the whole thing easier to carve. I also have this one modification, which I'll show you on this one, that makes it a whole lot more stable. So it's a lot less likely to fall on your hand when you're setting it up or just to go off at any random time. It has to be triggered by the trigger stick. And in order to do that, you're going to find a piece that has a little off branch coming out of it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and carve this out for you. First thing we're going to do is what I'm going to do is take the wood off the back here, and I'm going to try to get two pieces. So you really don't need it to be too long, depending on what you're trying to catch, but probably about as long as your finger is good enough, even a little shorter, maybe your pinky. So I'm going to do a beaver chew. Just cut this stick a little bit, trim it down. Get Bella, what are you doing here? Bella always likes to come ruin my videos. Get, Bella, get. She's a good girl. Just always so curious. Alright, so now I got that cut down. That's what I got left. I'm going to cut it off probably about right there. So I'm left with that right there. Now what I'm going to do is on the side where you got the offshoot, I'm going to take off, I'm basically going to make like a long like wedge kind of cut. I'm trying to keep it in line with that offshoot a little bit. Keep taking it down. Right down to about halfway point, and you can see that because I got the pith right there. That's the middle of the wood. So I'm going to go just a little bit past that. Right about there. Alright. Now, I'm going to go ahead and flatten the top. And come on this side a little bit. Kind of making a almost chisel-like edge. This is important because this is where you can adjust the sensitivity of it. That little chisel edge. Alright, so that's that part. Now we're going to go ahead and make, this will be the part that's on the ground, and now we're going to make the lever part. I'm going to use this stick for it. So you're going to make this one just a little bit longer than down past that offshoot, and then a little bit over the top, so right about there. Overall, pretty much the same length as the bottom piece. So I got the length. Just kind of flatten this part a little bit. Alright, so now what you want to do is go ahead and make a 7-notch. You're going to find exactly where you're going to make that. Right. You want to leave like probably about an inch or a half inch down from the bottom, and right there is where your 7 is going to be. So 7 notch is just, you're going to make a cut right there and undercut. But this time, instead of just making a small 7 notch, I'm going to make a long cut to go all the way from the bottom. And keep working that just to keep a real flat, inclined plane. There, it's like a really long 7 notch. These are just some real good whittling skills that everyone should practice. It takes a little while to get good at it, because it's a lot of like just eyeballing, lining everything up. But basically you want this 7 notch, the wedge here, to match up to this one. So in a lot of the figure fours you'll see in books and stuff, it'll have a real big angle like this, which is fine, but in certain cases you want it to be really sensitive, and having a smaller angle makes it easier to have that sensitivity. There's also a lot of adjusting we can do on the top, but if you've seen my video on the Siberian deadfall, it's basically the same thing. With the Siberian, it's a little more splitting and trying to get more like board shaped wood. So I kind of boiled it down to this method, which makes it a little easier, and you can use smaller pieces of wood, like the size of your pinky in diameter. Alright, so I've got my notch, my 7 notch, my chisel piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this offshoot down just a little bit, and then I'm going to make a mark right where that offshoot meets this one, and I'm going to make a little hole in there. What that's going to do, I'll show you in a minute, but it's going to help to stabilize the whole thing. So I'm just going to shorten this a little bit. Really don't need a lot here. Just trim it down. Just want a little nub. This is You won't see this in most figure fours people show out there, but it's kind of something I just came up with. Add a little extra element of consistency to the whole system. Alright, so I got that trimmed. Just kind of get the collar flush with the wood. That should be good. We're going to mark where this meets up with it. Right there. A little push down. And I got the mark on the bark. The mark on the bark. I'll make a little hole right there. Make sure it still meets up. Oh yeah, perfect. Go ahead and make it a little deeper. That again. Alright, so now what I need to do is cut the notch where the trigger stick's going to go. It's going to be right about, I could go a little higher, probably right about there. Then I'm going to have to trim this one down a bit. Right there, I'm going to mark it with a knife. Basically another 7 notch. Although this one is going to be a little more squared. Alright, see that? I'm going to come from the back and square it off because you're going to need a nice square part right there. Now we gotta find ourselves, well, let me trim this one first, and then we'll find ourselves the trigger stick. So I'm gonna mark, just put the edge of my knife on that notch, mark it on this one, and then we're gonna trim this one off. And I'm just gonna flatten the back. Let's see that again. Flat. Alright, that meets up pretty good. Now we just need to get that trigger stick. All right, let's see. Probably can make something out of this. Really don't need it that long. We'll trim it later. That, split it. Split it again. That's going to be our bait stick. Flatten it a little bit. Work it down. Want this to be nice and light. You don't, especially with a really sensitive trap, you don't want the trigger stick, the bait stick itself to trigger it. You want the animal to. So you want it to be nice and light, thin. Hey! Another goat. Alright, then on this one, we're gonna cut a rectangle notch. I've got to mark exactly where it goes. Right there. Make one notch. Start with a 7 notch towards the back. Alright, once you got that 7 notch, put everything back together. Hook the 7 onto there, and then mark where the next one's gonna go, right there. And make another notch right there. And this one doesn't have to be deep at all. Shallow notch will be more sensitive. Alright. So let's see if it all holds together. What I'm going to do is set it up like this. Put a little pressure on here. It looks like I'm just going to have to adjust this hole a little bit. Because right now the pressure's on the hole. We need the pressure to be on the notch. So there's a couple ways I can do that. Probably just need to make the hole a little higher. Just gonna adjust that a little bit. That should work. It's really just a little divot. It doesn't have to go all the way through. I'll show you in a minute what the real advantage of having that. Alright, yeah, now it's perfect. So we got the pressure is on the fulcrum, alright? We have to think of this as a lever, that's what it is. Okay, so here we have the fulcrum, right there. This is the, what does he call it, the advantage? I don't know. This is the bar that the lever goes. And you can see you're getting a lot of mechanical advantage, and that gives it its sensitivity. Alright, let's see if this matches up. Put it right there. Put a little pressure on it. Stick that on. I'm going to have to adjust that notch a bit, but looks like it should work. Go ahead and turn it into an actual rectangle notch. Go. And this one I'm going to give it a little bit more of a chisel edge. Goes there. Just give it a sharper edge. stick it on there. There we go. So right now I'm putting pressure between my two fingers. That's going to be how it is with a rock. When that's moved, thing comes apart. Still needs a little tweaking. There it is. So what's happening right now is you have to think of where the line of force is coming. Right now it's basically right there, which should be good. So let's try it with a rock and see how it works. Let me see if I can adjust this so you can see. That should be. All right. Set this up. Put a little piece of bark under to help the stick not to drive into the ground. Set that right there. Oh yeah, that's perfect. All right. So what that little nub does is it helps to keep it from moving side to side and coming off. So if I didn't have it, it could still kind of wobble. But when it butts up against that nub, it keeps it solid. And then this, so what's happening right now is if I let go of this, the thing goes down. This bait stick holds it in place. Set it up again. Wants to go, wants to go, wants to go. Put the bait on there. Sometimes you don't even need bait. All you need to do is put food all around it. Right now it's set up. And all it takes, let's see, I'm gonna try not to get my hand in there. All it takes is the slightest touch and it's down. And that's the figure 4. But I'll show you real quick. In order to adjust the sensitivity, so you can see it right there. That's the 7 notch. This is the stick that, like that. All right. So if you wanted to make it less sensitive, what you're going to do is carve this right there so that the part that's touching the rock is further out that way. If you want to reduce the sensitivity, you're going to do the opposite. Now, if you go too far back, what's going to happen is you're going to turn this from a figure 4 into a promontory peg. All right. So in other words, when the weight sits on here, instead of it wanting to flip off and fall down, it's just going to put pressure on it and actually stay up on its own. You won't even need this triggers, the bait stick. So in that case, you could flip it over and use it like that. Put the bait right there, and now what you have is a promontory peg. So the figure 4, promontory peg, all those things are really the same concept. They're just tweaking the way that it all comes together just a little bit different. But if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and give it a thumbs up and comment and let me know what's your favorite trap triggers and anything that you would be interested in watching in the future.